Look at us. We made it all the way till the end of October, and I've got a few fantastic questions from folks in our Patreon community that I get to answer for you today. Before we get into answers, just a quick bit of gratitude for all the folks over on the Patreon community. I love getting to interact with all of you and learn from all of you and answer your incredible questions and just be on this wild journey with you. So thank you. If you are interested in full access to all of the courses, the workshops, the advanced classes, the monthly plant spirit journeys, all that stuff happens over on Patreon for one low monthly contribution to my work. And I am so grateful for everybody who participates. So with that, let's get into it. So Maria asks, do you communicate with plants in a casual, relaxed way also? Without rituals, petitions, deep meditations, and such, just smiling with them during a walk through the woods, talking with them, petting them, or just saying hi? I love this question. Absolutely. And really, I think that while the formalities have a purpose and that there are certain situations where the formalities will always be important, specific plants, there are specific plants that really demand that kind of level of formality, and new plants, plants that we've never encountered before, and plants that we meet when we're traveling that don't live in the same place where we live. So they're really, new kinds of people for us. Uh, I think that it is natural for most people that the formalities fade away. You know, Specifically when we get to know an individual plant more and more, that formal handshake, meet and greet becomes replaced with familiarity and comfort and kinship, right? It's just like when we meet a new human friend. At first we're very polite and very formal and all of that. And then as we get to know them, we let more and more of our personality out and become more casual with them and more friendly with them. That absolutely happens with the plants. And I always think, when we feel that kind of levity, that kind of ease in our communication with plants, that's a very, very good sign. So I look for it. It sometimes takes many instances of formality and sometimes many years of formality before that type of convivial attitude, that friendlier energy arises. And with some plants, like I said, it never does. I have plants in my life, elder being one of them, to whom I'm always very, very formal, very respectful. That's just what feels right to me. And I have others that when I pass them, maple, and the leaves are hanging down over the trail or over the sidewalk, we'll give them a little high five and a wink, and that feels appropriate for my relationship with them. So this is a fantastic question, and it really brings up a fantastic point that this work is relationship based. That it's just a reminder this is relationship based, and that our relationships will evolve and adapt and change, and that they're allowed to be unique. They're allowed to be what they are for each of us, right? So I think that's very cool. So thank you. Great question. Spencer asked, by the way, reading the questions blind this month. I like to do that, so I haven't seen any of these in advance. I think it's funner that way. Spencer asks, what's a good way to start thinking about long-term use of categories such as nervines, nootropics, and alternatives? Do you change up the herbs and formula within the action, take a break from the action altogether, taper down the dosage for maintenance? Also, if you have time, how can you work with St. John's wort for long-term mood regulation? So there's a lot in here, and I want to make sure that I understand your question appropriately, right? So let's maybe break it down into pieces, and I'll try to just speak on a couple of points. What's a good way to start thinking about long-term use of categories such as nervines, nootropics, and alternatives? And what I think is being asked here is, what if you want to work with a particular nervine, like let's say vervain, for long term, like more than 6 months, more than a year, several years? This is a really good question because even the most gentle herbs can be inappropriate for long-term use. And there's two reasons for this. Hear me out. The first is that sometimes herbs are not appropriate for long-term use because they will start building up in the body, or maybe they're a little bit hard on the liver or the kidneys. And for 6 months to a year, that's fine. But past that, it becomes a little bit too challenging. Sometimes people can develop a sensitivity from certain herbs of working with them for long-term. I don't want anybody to worry about that. That's a very rare, situation, but it's there. So you have that more sort of direct, phytochemical reason why taking these concentrated amounts of herbal medicine every single day for months and months and months on end could maybe not be such a good idea long term. The other thing that I think about is why? Why do we need to take something long term? Why do we need to take that formula for so long? And sometimes there is a reason why a formula or an herb is a long-term part of our life. Maybe somebody has a genetic condition or a really chronic disease that they've had for most of their life, and we're just now starting to do work on it, and it's going to take years to unwind. I always want to think, if we're not seeing some kind of results in 6 months to a year, maybe the plan isn't that we keep taking that herb for another 6 months to a year, but maybe we reevaluate and say, wonder if I should change this herb up. Maybe this herb was the right herb for that first 3 months, and we peeled the onion, got a little bit deeper into the problem, and now that herb has done the healing that they can do with us, and we need to move on to a different herb, which would negate us worrying about long term, right? Sometimes I wonder, have we misassessed the issue? Maybe we're working with these strong nootropic herbs long term, but it's not nootropic action we need. Maybe it's blood flow. Maybe it's that we need to focus on circulation to the brain rather than brain plasticity, right? So I always think, if we're taking an herb for a super long-term amount of time, why aren't we seeing a resolution to the issue, right? And of course, there are herbs that are meant to be taken every day long-term, like adaptogens. I don't care how great you feel or how terrible you feel. I want people to take an adaptogen every single day for life, right? These are lifer herbs, and you might move around a little bit within the list of appropriate adaptogens for you as an individual, but we want to keep them. I have been taking ashwagandha nearly every single day since 2013, maybe even before that. So there are examples where it's fine. So hopefully that answers your question, to give you some things to think about. Move around. If you are taking that Nervine and it's at the 6 month, 8 month, 12-month mark, and you're like, wow, I have filled this herbal formula so many times, maybe it's time to say, what's a different one that I could sit with or try? And maybe it's going to be a longer haul for you. I don't want to overlook the fact that I have had clients on formulas for upwards of 3 years before. Very specific situation, but it happens. Do you change up the herbs formula with the action? So there's a good point. Make a change, take a break. Breaks are great. I love breaks, even with adaptogens. That's why I say I've taken ashwagandha almost every day since 2012, 2013, because when I run out, when my bottle is empty, when I take that last dose, I allow that to be an invitation for me to take a week off. See how it feels. Maybe I get a weekend and I'm like, well, I feel fine. Maybe I don't need to take ashwagandha every day. Maybe I'm working on something else. And those breaks are very smart. I think that unless we are treating a very serious, acute condition that we don't want to leave hanging, if it's more of a tonic, nourishing, supportive formula, I love having people run out of their formula and take a few days before they even worry about getting more. Just get that natural break, natural buffer. How can you work with St. John's wort for long-term mood regulation? So here's one that I don't like working with long-term, right? So a couple options that I might think of. First is that we maybe work with St. John's wort during the dark half of the year, and we move to a different mood regulating herb during the bright half of the year, right? So you have 6 months on, roughly 6 months off, and then another herb that comes in and provides kind of a different supportive energy, right? So they play together. And then maybe at the liminal points, when we move from dark to bright, bright to dark, we combine the two herbs together for a few weeks to ease from one into another. I like to do that with people. Maybe your breaks are more pronounced. So it's 2 weeks on, 1 week off, 2 weeks on, 1 week off. If I really felt pressed to keep Hypericum in somebody's life and it needed to be long term, I would definitely do some liver pacification. I would want to know all the pharmaceuticals they're taking and probably would not allow a long term St. John's wort use if there were any daily pharmaceuticals for a lot of different reasons. And I would maybe see if we couldn't find some way to cadence a formula, bring some other herbs in again, where we could lower the St. John's wort to nearly a negligible amount during 4 to 6 months of the year, the bright, sunny, warm part of the year, and then bring that herb back up in the formula. So this is an herb personally that I would not want somebody on long term. I would want to get them on it, figure out what's going on, undo some patterns, and then move on. But if there's a reason, we're either going to go down to a super, super, super tiny dose, a drop dose of a tincture, 3 to 9 drops. We're going to mitigate long-term use with some other herbs, or we're going to try to figure out that cool half on, half off, half the year on, half the year off. Cool questions, Spencer. Thank you. Let's do one more from Andrea. When a client comes to you with a sensitivity to a certain plant material, how do you encourage or discourage them from using that material? Do you ever present them an opportunity to overcome that sensitivity or allergy? It's a cool question. No, it's not in my realm of practice, right? So if somebody is really, really sensitive to Asteraceae family plants, for example, and I really, really want to give them chamomile, then I will find a different herb to give them. That's part of me flexing my muscles and being like, okay, if chamomile can't be the herb, who can be the herb? And maybe they can't ingest chamomile, so we'll do chamomile sachet, right? So they can carry chamomile without having any direct contact. The chamomile is not touching the skin. There's going to be no Asteraceae contact dermatitis. They're not taking that internally. They're not going to get those fluey allergy symptoms, anything like that. So that's one option, is that sometimes we can find a workaround that won't trigger the sensitivities or the allergies. Sometimes we have to honor the sensitivities and the allergies and just find a different plant. I certainly know herbalists who would probably be willing to say, oh, you can't work with mushrooms, any medicinal mushrooms. Let's figure that out. Let's address that as though it's a presenting health problem and figure out how to help your body become more friendly and more safe feeling with these medicinal mushrooms. It's just not in my particular scope of practice. I absolutely think it's possible. I know naturopathic physicians, other herbalists, homeopaths especially, different people that will do that. Totally. It's just not in mine, so I don't want to speak on it too much, but I will say, where there's a will, there's a way. If you really, really want to connect with a plant that you're sensitive to, you can find a way creatively to connect to that plant. You might not be taking them internally, you might not be able to rub them on your skin, but you can be in relationship with them and you can fully and effectively receive all of their medicine. That I will stand on. So let's wrap it up there. You guys, thank you. Fantastic questions this month. We put a question call out on the 20th of every single month on Patreon. Everybody of every tier gets to participate in that. And what happens is I take those questions. Some of them I just answer, or maybe I've already done a class on it. So I just link the person and say, hey, go check this class out. But most of them, I do what we just did, which is I have them printed off and I sit down and turn the camera on and I read them and we talk just like if we were in person and you were coming to me and saying, hey, what do you think about this, right? So tons of fun, and I look forward to these every single month. So thank you guys so much. I hope your October was lovely. And, November coming up, I would just take an opportunity to say, take care of yourself, and if you have the resources, the ability to look out for a couple of other people too, this is a good opportunity, a good time for us to nourish our nervous systems, to really lean into the protection and the providence of the plant spirits and into whatever kind of spiritual path you walk. This transition into November, how I think most of the month of November and maybe many months after that might be challenging, so let's do some self-care and try to care for one another as well. Okay. Take care, guys. I'll see you soon.